In 1968, 3 astronauts were in space circling around the moon. They were roughly 240,000 miles away from home, farther out than any human had ever been before. So, near the end of the year, NASA asked them to record a message to be sent to the people back on Earth. It was a historical moment, a broadcast from the far side of the world to an audience of 1 billion people, the largest ever reached by a human voice. However, NASA never told them what to say, only that they should say something that was worthy of the moment. This was not an easy task, but after many discussions, what these men finally chose to do would later become one of the most powerful broadcasts that was ever made, a message from space that would change the course of human history, inspiring millions of people and sparking a new wave of important movements all around the world.
Did you know at the time what kind of impact that would have?
This was just a beacon of hope as well as awe.
People changed.
The largest planned event in American history.
Fighting each other, shooting weapons and bombs, and maybe they could start learning to get along with each other.
They decide, it's their choice, okay?
That was one of the most moving experiences.
Became a beacon of hope.
And for all the people back on Earth, the crew of Apollo 8 has a message that we'd like to send you.
If there was ever a year America needed to patch up its self-image, it was 1968.
This was a terrible time, full of despair and anxiety. In 1968, America was divided, exhausted, and losing faith in the future. First, there was a war in Vietnam. Then, the assassination of Martin Luther King. And a few months later, the Senator Robert F. Kennedy. Everything felt like it was falling apart. And to make things even worse, this was in the middle of a Cold War, a dangerous rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union. A standoff that was played out through propaganda, expansion of military power, and proxy conflicts, all under the shadow of a possible nuclear war. Then, interestingly, a big part of the struggle between the two countries also came in the form of a space race.
The space race with the Soviet Union was an extension, in my mind, of the Cold War itself. We were seriously worried about the Soviet Union striking our country. Every time we turned around, the Russians one-upped us.
Any achievement in space became a public measure, making the country look more powerful and impressive to the whole world. For many years, the Soviet Union had been leading ahead. In 1957, they launched Sputnik, the world's first artificial Earth satellite. Then, in 1961, the first man into space.
Everybody wants to be the great hero. Yuri Gagarin was first to blaze the trail in space, with the incarnation of a well-developed intellect and moral integrity. And when he came back to Earth, the welcomes he was given by nation, land, and continent would end.
By 1968, America was desperate not to lose again.
NASA, with input from the CIA, advised that the Soviet Union were planning a flight around the moon. The idea of them beating us, really, I found that very uncomfortable.
Concerned about the Soviet Union claiming another major victory, NASA then quickly made changes to an existing mission and decided to send 3 men, Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and William Manders, on a spacecraft Apollo 8 to orbit the moon, pushing them farther into space than any human had ever gone before.
The incredible thing about Apollo 8 was how very quickly it happened. What NASA decided was to send it all the way around the moon with the astronauts in it without separating anything off and just bring it back to Earth. They were going to go in a kind of figure 8 around the moon and then back to Earth, orbiting the moon a few times.
Apollo 8 will become the first manned spacecraft to ride atop America's largest and most powerful launch vehicle, Saturn V. Its destination, the moon.
There is the making of a human partnership where space technology and science will serve as instruments of man's peace in the world.
It's 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9. And we have ignition sequence start. The engines are on. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have commit. We have liftoff. I was amazed when the thing lit off how bad our training had been. I felt like I was a rat in the jaws of a giant terrier. The whole instrument panel was just blurred in front of my face.
Now the time approached for the most immense commitment of the mission, Lunar Orbit Insertion, LOI. A burn of the service module engine would place Apollo 8 into orbit around the moon.
While Apollo 8 was in space, the crew were witnessing something no human beings had ever seen before. And unknowingly, one of the crew members would capture an important photograph that would later change the way humanity saw the world itself.
My job on the crew was to be the photographer, which meant to run the camera against complicated, busy schedule of shooting lunar landmarks. They gave me a little bit of photography training. I had a Hasselblad, didn't even have a light meter on our flight. And so we were in lunar orbit, upside down and going backwards. So for the first several revolutions, we didn't see the Earth. And didn't really think about that. And then we righted ourselves, heads up. Suddenly I saw out of the corner of my eye this color. It was shocking.
Oh, God, look at that picture over there. There's the Earth coming up. Wow, that's pretty. Got a color film, Jim? Hand me a roll of color film. Oh, man, that's pretty. Where is it?
So I managed to get Lovell to get me a color magazine, put the long lens on and started snapping away. Without a light meter, I really didn't know what to set it. So I just took the f-stop, took a shot, moved it, took a shot, moved it. And they really didn't think that much about it.
It was an incredible picture that would later change the course of human history. But it wasn't something that was planned at all. At this time, Apollo 8 was on the far side of the moon, carrying 3 men. They were farther and more alone than any human had ever been before. And in that moment, a tiny blue Earth rose above that great horizon, floating in a dark empty space. And hiding within the tiny blue object was everything this man had ever known.
I could put my thumb up to the window and completely hide the Earth. Now you have to think about that. Over 5 billion people. Everything I ever knew was behind my thumb.
As I viewed the Earth, I thought, here we were fighting each other, shooting weapons and bombs and testing nukes, and I thought, we humans need to handle our beautiful planet with more care.
While the Apollo 8 were orbiting the moon, the crew was scheduled to deliver a message on Christmas Eve to the people of planet Earth, to what was then the largest audience ever reached by a human voice. However, NASA never told them what to say.
NASA had, with wisdom in my view, suggested to Frank Borman that he think of something significant to say at this time. Don't sing Jingle Bells. They didn't give him a lot of rules.
But even after many discussions with team members, Frank Borman still couldn't figure out what to say. So he asked for the help of a friend named Simon Bourgain, who was working for the United States Information Agency.
Simon Bourgain was trying to think up something to say that was appropriate. he went to a newspaper man, Joe Layton. Joe Layton spent up most of the night trying to figure out what would be appropriate to say to millions of people all around the earth. And finally, his wife came down and she said, "What are you doing?" And he told her what his project was. And she said, "Well, it's natural. Read the first 10 verses of Genesis, which is the foundation of most of the world's religions." And that's how it finally came to pass.
We are now approaching lunar sunrise, and for all the people back on Earth, the crew of Apollo 8 has a message that we would like to send to you. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. Let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament, the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And from the crew of Apollo 8, we close with good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on this good earth.
They were on a very high-tech mission. And what did they do? They went back to the very beginning of the Bible. They went back to the moment of creation. And that was a really kind of chilling, extraordinary moment when people listened to that broadcast and realized the scale of what the astronauts were doing.
This was just a beacon of hope as well as awe.
The most watched television broadcast in history.
That was one of the most moving experiences.
And I have never seen the degree of this emotional outpouring.
At the end of December, during Christmas, okay? Christmas holiday, everybody's home, they're in space. They pull out the Bible and they read, in turn, the first 10 verses of Genesis. They're seeing Earth the way no one has seen Earth before. They're seeing the moon the way no one has seen the moon before. They were compelled to read from the Bible. Don't count myself among the ranks of believers. Apollo 8 saved the year, 1968. There were atheists on Earth saying, well, using government funds and the separation of church and state. And I say, did you look at Earth from 250,000 miles out? Was that you out there? The answer would be no. My reply would be, then shut the f*** up.
We'd taken the risk. We beat the Soviets to and around the moon. But I was looking forward to getting back home and seeing the family and getting back to, quote, more normal life.
For one moment in history, the nations of Earth were united in the eternity of deep space. All of mankind joined 3 Americans orbiting 60 miles above a stark, lifeless world.
So it was the first time human beings had been to the moon, the first time they saw the far side of the moon, the first time anybody had been that far or that fast in human history. To get outside and to look back and to see your home is an extraordinary thing. It took the astronauts by surprise, but it was only when we got the colour photographs, the still photographs, back again, and could see that Earth was limited, finite, that we got a sense of what our own home looked like.
Unexpectedly, the Genesis reading from space, along with the Earthrise photograph, they will soon be published around the world, will quickly impact society, setting in motion something far beyond what anyone could have imagined at the time.
Only a few short weeks ago, we shared the glory of man's first sight of the world as God sees it, small and blue and beautiful. In that eternal silence where it floats, is to see ourselves as riders on the earth together, brothers in that bright loveliness in the eternal coast, brothers who know now they are truly brothers. In that moment of surpassing technological triumph, men turn their thoughts toward home and humanity, seeing in that far perspective that man's destiny on earth is not divisible, telling us that however far we reach into the cosmos, our destiny lies not in the stars, but on earth itself, in our own hands, in our own hearts.
The space program may end up being a very positive force for creating more cooperation among the peoples of the earth. I know that since we've flown, we've gotten congratulatory letters from about every country in the world. And I hope that in some way that the trip will advance the cause that we're also interested in, and namely peace and a lasting peace.
The Earthrise picture helped kickstart the environmental movement, which had been underway, but was having trouble getting off the ground.
The photograph helped accelerate the spread of an environmental consciousness around the planet. We came to understand that it is all we have and that we need to do more to protect it.
In recent months, pollution has come right to the center of national attention, and it seems likely to stay there.
Choked by traffic, suffocated by smog, poisoned by water, deafened by noise.
Every American uses something like 26 million gallons of water in his lifetime. In all too many parts of America, it's becoming more and more difficult to find breathable air, drinkable water. 60% of all urban air pollution is caused by the internal combustion engine. But at the present rate of pollution, it's predicted that by the end of the century, all of America's major river systems will be biologically dead.
It may well be that the world's greatest threat is not man's conflict with himself, but his increasing abuse of his environment.
Among the things that were most powerful were photographs of things that were breathtakingly ugly, of downtown Los Angeles where you couldn't see one city block ahead of you because of the smog. And we also needed to have some beautiful photographs. And none was more important than the photograph of Earth itself from the vantage point of space.
After the Earthrise photo made its rounds, people changed. Earth, the planet, mattered as never before. Thinking about Earth as a holistic ecosystem and not just your section of it.
One of the photo's biggest contributions was to help bring the need to protect the Earth into public view, and leading to the creation of the first Earth Day.
It helped lead to things as Friends of the Earth, Earth Day.
Earth Day 1970 was a Wednesday. It was April 22nd. When I got up that morning, I didn't anticipate what it would finally become.
Earth Day demonstrations began in practically every city and town in the United States this morning, the first massive nationwide protest against the pollution of the environment.
I've never seen anything like it. The response has been tremendous. These kids have really come through and have made this one of the most exciting days Morse has had.
People are aware. Let us forget scapegoats and get on to the technical and political work of doing something effective about it.
We declare that the proper use of science is not to conquer nature, but to live in it. That to save ourselves, we must save the world that is our habitat. On this day, we shall begin, by our own acts, to dedicate the wisdom of science
and the power of technology to the welfare of man.
When the wire services, the Associated Press, pulled together the things from all of their stringers from all of the cities across the United States and tried to tabulate what the crowd size was for this event as a whole, their numbers were north of 20 million people. That made it the largest planned event in American history. It suddenly told people this isn't just a bunch of hippies out having picnics in the park. This is a powerful political force.
To see the Earth as a single thing hanging in space, to see that it is finite, makes a huge difference to people's awareness. Suddenly everybody can see, whether they were on the spacecraft or not, that the Earth is limited. There is only so much of it to go around. And that image of Earth became, the word's overused, but it became an icon for the environmental movement.
I believe that those of you who have gathered here to save the Earth are willing to pay the price to save our environment. It means choosing cleaner cars rather than faster cars, more parks instead of more highways, and more houses and more schools instead of more weapons and more war.
In a campaign that was mostly about defeating things that were really very bad, Bill Anders' photograph became a beacon of hope for a planet that needed to come together to save itself.
We still think of air as free, but clean air is not free, and neither is clean water. The price tag on pollution control is high. Through our years of past carelessness, we incurred a debt to nature, and now that debt is being called. The program I shall propose to Congress will be the most comprehensive and costly program in this field in America's history.
Relatively rapidly, within the next 5 years, we passed the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Marine Mammal Protection Act, the Endangered Species Act, the Safe Drinking Water Act. Things that were inconceivable by the end of 1970 were unstoppable. It did a powerful job of making us aware that we have one planet to support ourselves forever, and that we've got to take better care of it. The big issues that are facing us today, these are all global problems. These are things that any one nation cannot solve by itself.
With what we now know about the limited capacity of the Earth, about the appalling damage that humanity is doing to the Earth, understood that this was all there was and all there was ever going to be for us to live on.
Well, as I viewed the Earth over the stark lunar horizon, it struck me as a bit ironic that though we had trained or focused on going to the moon to discover the moon, what we really discovered was the Earth. It's really too bad, we're shooting missiles and rockets and whatnot at each other on this tiny little place we call home. It's the only home in the universe for us, humans.
God has given mankind a stage upon which to perform. How the play turns out is up to us.